Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Fate of the Fellowship. This is a long-awaited design by Matt Leacock, the designer of Pandemic, and this Lord of the Rings themed game is essentially utilizing the Pandemic system with the Lord of the Rings story. If you're familiar with other games, such as recent games like Seven Wonders, the Seven Wonders Duel version, or Duel for Middle Earth, or older games such as War of the Ring, and other games like War of the Ring, the card game, right? There are a lot of different Lord of the Rings games out right now. The Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game, right? So we've had a lot of fun in this IP. I really enjoyed this IP and was really excited today to learn that a limited time version of the Fate of the Fellowship is available on Board Game Arena. It's listed under beta version, so there might still be some bugs, but it is there for everyone to try. It's anyone who signs up for Board Game Arena, not including a premium membership, anyone who wants to play for free can do so. I don't know how long this will be available for, and the features that are in this limited version are going to be first you can play as the 10 playable characters with only the 4 objective cards suggested for a player's first game. There are more objective cards in this game. We'll talk about those in a little bit. There are quite a few of them in the game, and there are a couple more playable characters as well. But so essentially, you are getting the introductory game for free to try. And if I'm not mistaken, the retail version of this game will come out in about a month or so. So there is that. But I was able to demo this game on Board Game Arena, and having been familiar with Pandemic itself, I recently finished Season 0 of the Pandemic Legacy series of games. And in addition to base Pandemic, I've played Iberia and some of the other offshoots, such as like the Pandemic dice game, etc. So I have some experience with Pandemic, not with all of the Pandemic versions or games like the Cthulhu one, the Roman one, etc. And so some mechanisms might be utilized in this game that is comparable to some of those other games. But as a quick overview of what is going on here, you have a similar system with Pandemic, meaning you have a hand of cards that are multi-use in nature. You can use them for the symbols that are located at the top left to utilize various actions and complete certain objectives as well. They're often used to help you travel in between certain areas on the map of Middle Earth. And you also need, for example, the ring tokens. You need to collect those in order to drop the ring into Mount Doom when Frodo and Sam travel there. So you're collecting these cards, you're using them for a variety of purposes, whether to hold on to them to use for later or to use them in an immediate action, such as movement or for combat, etc., right? And so and then obviously you have the deck, the shadow deck, right, where negative events happen. In this game, essentially what happens is you move and add enemy characters, they're red, to the board, and you move them according to a movement pattern that is depicted on the shadow card. There are other cards that are more event type in nature, where you add more units to the board, whether they be enemy orcs or what have you, or Nazgul. Some events allow you to choose between one of 3 negative consequences, etc. And you do have the epidemic cards in this game. They're the skies darken again or something like that. And so you do reshuffle the cards that you have revealed from the shadow deck put them on back on top and continue to reveal. And as the game progresses and you reveal more of those Shadow Darkens cards, the more you will turn over after every one of your turns from the Shadow deck to increase the difficulty throughout the game. All the while, you, as characters from the Lord of the Rings books, right, the IP, you are moving around and you're attacking to decrease the amount of enemy units on the board, and playing. Every character has certain abilities that are very thematic to what they do in the story, and essentially you're trying to fend off the enemy units and the Nazgul to play smartly and efficiently, gathering cards, playing them at the right time, and moving Frodo and Sam from the Shire all the way down to Mount Doom in order to hopefully complete the game in that regard. You can achieve certain objectives during the game. Once again, you have 4 objectives that you are trying to meet in this introductory game. These are interchangeable with 24 other ones, once again from the core box, that are not available on this version. And so these objectives will do many things, such as giving you icons to use during the game, more troops, etc. So those are good things to try to chase and achieve in order to keep your hope up. And literally, there is a track of hope that is another endgame condition. If that drops all the way down to 0, you lose the game. So that's essentially like the outbreaks track in the original game. So once again, I don't know if any of the other latest Pandemic games have more of a combat central type of experience, but this game feels different from the base Pandemic first, in terms not only with theme, of course, and the characters and the objective cards. Those feel different to me than what I've seen in past Pandemic games, but well, aside from like the legacy games with the objective cards. But in this game, as compared to the older game, in base Pandemic, you take an action to just remove like a disease cube from the board, right? It's very deterministic, and there aren't any variables or luck involved with that. But in this game, to represent and simulate the effects of battle and the uncertainty thereof, you do roll dice. And first, you roll dice when you enter into combat. Sometimes the die rolls fall in your favor, sometimes they don't. But in addition, there's a mechanism where these Nazgul and the Eye of Sauron are traveling around the board, and when they are in the same region as Frodo and Sam as they travel, you roll some black search dice, and those, if you roll the wrong icons, essentially you lose hope, and that also brings you closer to defeat in this game. So there is a lot of dice rolling in this game. These are mitigated by the cards. One use for the cards is to use those icons to mitigate the rolls or re-roll a bad dice to hopefully get a better outcome. But essentially, you are incorporating a lot of dice rolling into this game, which may or may not be to your liking if you like a more strategic or deterministic approach to Pandemic. For example, the luck of the Shadow deck, right, or the bad events deck, right, from the original game, where you place cubes, that is variance enough for some people to fight against, and you can kind of predict what might happen based off of what cards you know are going to be like reshuffled onto the top of the deck and revealed again. In this game, you do have that aspect, but in addition, with the dice rolling, it can feel a little bit more luck-driven than usual. And once again, that might be present in other current forms of Pandemic, but I suppose it does give a nod towards the more thematic approach to this game and the IP, where there are a lot of battles that are fought throughout the game. So there is that aspect to it. The base Pandemic game too, one of my concerns going into this was how replayable would it be? because Pandemic in and of itself is replayable because it is a challenging game, especially if you have a bunch of people who are new to the game and not familiar with the mechanisms. It could be a pretty interesting puzzle even at lower difficulties. And don't get me wrong, there are ways to make this particular game, The Fate of the Fellowship, more difficult. That is not available with the board game arena version, but it is an interesting and new puzzle compared to base Pandemic because of all of these different mechanisms and event cards and objectives and characters with new, special powers. It does create a new experience, but, would that experience wane in time based off of just what the original design had in terms of replayability, which was just to ramp up the difficulty, right? Some people nowadays really appreciate a variety of different characters to play as or different objectives to achieve, and this game does have that. You have so many different characters that a number of people can play as during the game, and the many different objectives might point you in a different way each game to move and to target, with your characters, in addition to the setup variability and the variability that's coming out in this shadow deck. And so there are a lot of different things that make this game feel very different. And in addition to that, what you are probably watching right now, you can play this solo, which was not... I guess this was a part of the original game as well, but the solo mode of this game is interesting. Just to touch on it briefly, you play as Frodo and Sam as well as 4 other characters, and you take turns playing as Frodo and Sam and one of the characters. The interesting thing about this game is even at higher player counts, at like 2, 3, or 4 players, someone always has to be Frodo and Sam, but you also get another character that you can control. It's not just the one character that you have as in past Pandemic games. You will be able to take one action from one of your characters and 4 actions from another. So you can really mix and match what you want to try to accomplish on your turn. And in the solo mode, you're always thinking about how much do I want to travel or progress with Frodo and Sam versus the next character in line, whether it be Pippin and Merry, Legolas, etc. So that was an interesting wrinkle to the past experiences that I've had with this game as well. So going into my first impressions, and I did not have a chance to formally, figure out what my impressions are with the rating of this game, but I'll show it up on the screen if I remember to do so, but I'm going to guess that it's somewhere between a 7 and an 8. I think this game is a really cool representation and mashup between Pandemic and Lord of the Rings. I think it really favors a lot of the flavor from the story, right, from Lord of the Rings. It does so in an interesting way that does feel very luck driven with the dice rolls and the battling and everything. It does make this game feel harder than Pandemic, and maybe that's because myself and speaking for myself, but perhaps maybe for you or for anyone else who's had a lot of experience with Pandemic, it's still a challenging game, but you kind of have your objectives in mind as you approach that puzzle. And so this does feel very new and fresh. It adds a lot of different wrinkles to this puzzle that you're trying to solve in a somewhat familiar way. And it intrigues me enough to want to play it again, right? I think, cooperative games usually aren't my cup of tea. Pandemic is a game that is prone to quarterbacking or having someone tell others what to do on their turn. This game will have that as well. It tries to mitigate some of that with, having, the cards in your hand be potentially private from others, but since it's a cooperative game in nature, there's not a lot of hidden information from one from another, and I've seen that happen in a lot of cooperative games recently, where the fact that you do have either hidden information from other players or a really complex puzzle to solve on the board, makes it so that everyone still feels like they're chipping in, but not telling each other what to do, essentially, right? And so this game might still have that element to it, but I think it's a challenging game, that I think putting, a bunch of heads together to solve it initially will feel very refreshing and fun for those who enjoy a cooperative puzzle. I, once again, really enjoy this theme. I'm always on the hunt for a board game that really represents Lord of the Rings in a way that it feels natural to me. And I think this game really does accomplish that in a somewhat shorter playtime. I think War of the Ring, the original, one versus one Lord of the Rings simulation, is a very long game from what I've heard. I haven't played it yet. I've played the card game, and that was a longer experience as well. That was more abstracted. This one, I feel like, kind of toes the line between full abstraction and a very thematic war type experience with the dice rolls, right? So it's going to be interesting to continue to play this. And just to touch on the fact that it's on Board Game Arena means that you can play asynchronously. Take that, with the grain of salt that is there, because if you play this asynchronously, sure, you can really think about your turns, but the communication might be more limited, especially if you play with players that you don't know. And so it might be a even more challenging experience than having a bunch of heads together playing this at a table, especially at a table. It's probably the easiest, of course, to play this in person, even versus in real time online. But I think it does feel like it provides a different type of experience with Pandemic that it's intriguing to me. It's not like this very same Pandemic, but just with a coat of paint that is Lord of the Rings colored. It does feel like it's its own game. And once again, I don't know how much is borrowed from the most recent Pandemic games, but to me at least, having just finished Pandemic season, Legacy Season 0, and knowing the base games, this is a really cool interpretation and version of Pandemic that I want to continue to explore. So those are my first impressions of this game. Once again, this version on Board Game Arena online, free to play, is for a limited time. Maybe my guess is going to be about a month or so before the retail version comes out. And hopefully they, after a period of time, will allow this game to be fully implemented onto the system of Board Game Arena for all of us to play once everyone has had a chance to be forced, I guess, to buy the physical game. I'm very tempted to do so just to have this version of Pandemic in my collection. I think this is a game that will be both easy and hard to play with others. It's easy because it's cooperative, it's easy because it's Pandemic, and the system is, noble and recognizable to those who have played Pandemic before. But it does step up the complexity compared to base Pandemic enough that it might be challenging for those new to board games. But I think the IP, going through some of the character cards and the events were very thematic, right? Looking at what, for example, Merry and Pippa can do, they can distract the Nazgul to chase them instead of going in and coming into their region, instead of going into another one where like Frodo and Sam are. And that feels very representative of the game itself. Gandalf can travel over great distances alone, right? So there are a lot of helps throughout the game with the characters and the cards and etc. that help you reenact what the game or what the IP and the story tells. And so it's a great retelling with the opportunity to relive this story in a slightly different light. And so I don't think it's going to feel similar from game to game in terms of what you are accomplishing compared to what the original story tells you, because of how things shake up, how things are set up at the beginning of the game, as well as the objective cards and the characters that you play. So I think it does accomplish that, in meaning that it is a replayable game. It is a tough challenge to play, So it's going to be challenging for even for those who might be pandemic veterans, and it's got a great IP to boot. So so yeah, those are my first impressions. I'm really excited for this game and grateful for the chance to have demoed this on Board Game Arena, and look forward to doing more so during this event. Thank you for watching or listening to this video, and hope that you schedule an appointment with me real soon, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.